Hi friends, this is Praveen and today we are going to learn about the MySQL built-in functions. How do you connect to the databases and how do you interact from PHP pages to the MySQL databases. So before we get into started, let me just explain how the thing's going to work out. This is my desktop which you can see here, and I've got currently a XAMPP 5 version. We got like XAMPP 7, and the things that you can save inside the folders is htdocs 5 or 7. Currently I'm going to use XAMPP 5 for executing the files. I've got my notepad++. So let's get started with how do you work with interacting with database connections through PHP pages. So for this you need to have some built-in functions which I'm going to introduce you first. So let's get started to the topics. So this is where I'm going to use my XAMPP, which I'm going to start with run as administrator privileges, and we got this XAMPP popping up and saying yes, and I'm going to go and just give this connections to get started with my Apache web server getting connected to default port number 80, and this is MySQL connection which is connecting to default 3306. So I'm going to keep this tally bar inside the tally bar. Now opening the browser, first we'll go and just go and check with the database page, which you can type by localhost php myadmin, and this is where I've got my php myadmin. Currently I've got like some of the databases, like we have flipkart_db, we have Informix. These are all the default things we have. So now that the PHP myadmin is a web tool where I can access my database, and under the left side I've got currently some of the databases. By default these are all installed databases, and the database we have is flipkart_db, and I think we have some of the tables like brands, categories and products, which I'll get in touch with this later. So we are going to go back, and this is my page, and the rest of the things that I am using my files to get saved is in htdocs 5, and I'm currently working with Crud. In this Crud we have one of the page called MySQL Functions. So I want you to know about all the predefined functions which we use for connecting to databases through PHP pages. So without this we cannot access database through PHP pages. So you need to know all of these functions which I have already written. So for the first time, as you're seeing this, you could see that we have a tag of PHP, and here we have predefined functions in MySQL. So let's get started one by one. We have the first thing is to connect to database server. A predefined function mainly used to connect to database based on argument values we supply. So if you use MySQL_connect, it's a predefined function which will take hostname, username and password. Will not work on PHP 7. So this function is not going to work with PHP 7 version. This is going to be on a 5th version and less than 5th. And if you see this one, this is MySQL iConnect. This is something works on PHP 7. So you should know when we use this function MySQL_connect, that needs a hostname, username and password, and currently we are going to use a MySQL database connection with hostname as localhost, username as root and password is empty. And so is the case with the connections that you can establish with PHP 7. You should use iConnect, which is an improved connection to the database. So if you're working, for example, let me just give you an example on this. If you're using PHP XAMPP 7 or PHP 7 and you're trying to connect to database with using these functions like MySQL_connect, which will not connect. This will connect only to PHP 1 to 5 versions. As we have got a new version of PHP which is 7, it's going to work with I, which is an improved connection, and this is not going to work and it's being depreciated. This extension was depreciated in PHP 5 and above, and it was removed in PHP 7, this one as well as this one. So if you're working with PHP 7, you better use this for connecting to your database. And as usual, we have understanding about the connections that you should supply: hostname as localhost, username as root and password as empty. And if you have no idea about what this is, you should be going to the PHP myadmin user accounts, and the connections we are going to use is a hostname is localhost and the username is root, which you can see here, and the connections that we are going to use as password is no, and with this connections are being treated as all privileges. Okay, so I'm going to use this connections for connecting to my database. So once you are connected with the connections, we have one more thing called pconnect. It stands for persistency connection, and this is mostly used in a kind of way you can establish a connection to the database, and once connected, these connections cannot be deleted. So the connections are created permanently and the link identifications are being permanent. So if a project doesn't need to be shut down, and a persistency connection makes it to connect permanently. But when you use this MySQL_connect, it will connect whenever you need it, and whenever you need to close the connection, you can close them by using this particular function MySQL_close, which will close the connection that got generated by connection handler that is being held by $connection, which is a connection handler. So I can say this variable as a connection handler because this is used to connect to my database. So with this I can connect to my database, and if this is successful, I hope I can just go with something like I'm able to reach here. So you have been on a server but you haven't selected a database, but if you are in a GUI tool, I think I would be trying to increase my font size because this font size are very small. So I'm going to go to Alt, Tools, Option. I'm going to go for my content and just make it somewhere around 20, and this is what, yeah, quite well now. So what I'm saying is, if you're on this page, you're being on a global page, you haven't got any database to get selected. So if you're on a GUI tool and you're been on this connection, like you're on a main page, if you've been successfully connecting with this functions, you've been somewhere landing here through PHP. Now once you have a connections, you will be landing here to connect to your database. Now what's next you're going to do in GUI tool is you're going to use a database to get selected. So if you choose this one of the database, I hope you're not in a global databases, but you are on a particular database called flip_db. So this is where out of all the databases you have choose one of the DB. So if you want to do this with PHP pages, you better come to this one, and you should know that we have some functions called selecting a database. So let's try to understand what this will do. So I've got like MySQL_select_db, which needs a DB name. So a predefined function which is used to select database based on database name v argument, and this extension is depreciated and is removed in PHP 7. Instead what you do is you have to use in 7 as PHP MySQL_select_db, and here unlike you have only one argument as a database name for your previous selecting database, but for 7 version you have to use MySQL I_select_db, and you need to give the link identification of the connection. So in this way I can use CUNN as my link identification connection, and apart from this you need to go with the database name. So if you pass this or this one with the MySQL_select_db of your DB name, let's say I'm going to pass this database name flip_db. So if I would successfully select this, and this is going to give me help of going and reaching to my database. So if you successfully use this connection and the connection is being selected to a database, then I think you're not here. According to GUI tool, you're not here. Through PHP pages you've been somewhere here, right? Now once you have your database selected, I hope you need to have your tables. So to work with tables you need to know some SQL queries where you can generate or create tables. So to create tables you need to have a create query, or you need to know how to create a tables through create query, and to insert values you need to know insert queries. So there are certain SQL queries which you already should know it. So whatever the queries you have, I hope you would be generating them in the SQL box. So for example, just give me let me just pick up one of the file. So if you go here on my desktop, I have some queries. Let's try to edit this one, and you can see that if you know how to create a queries, you should learn create queries, and if you want to insert something, you should know insert queries, and if you guys want to select something, you need to know select queries, update, delete. So whatever you're going to write here as a queries, you should copy or write the queries within the SQL box. So this is where you are going to write your queries on a it's on a GUI tool where you execute your queries, and I could say this is an SQL box where you write your queries. But this is not the case that you have to use it through PHP. So to work with PHP, you better come to this one, and you can see that once you select your database, I hope if you're successfully selecting your database, you should pass here flip_db as my database exists. Now once you are in a database, you should create tables, or else database doesn't have any table. Default database doesn't have any table. So to create tables, you need to work with create queries, and you need to execute them in SQL box. So in GUI tool, you would be saying this as an SQL box, but in PHP pages, the SQL box is currently considered as running queries. So how do you run queries through PHP pages is what you can use as MySQL_query. MySQL_query through PHP is equivalent to GUI query box. So let's try to say I'm trying to work with a query called select. So select start from products. So when I see my database, for example, let's say I have got flip_db. So what I would do is I'm going to go and write down flip_db. So I'm in a situation where I have selected my database, and in this particular database I do think I have products. So if you can see here, MySQL_query, a predefined function which is used to take the queries of let's say I can say this is a select query which is trying to select a products, and that it needs all products or all fields. So this is going to take a SQL, a variable, and I can say this variable as a query handler because this particular query is holding by this variable. So I can say this as a query handler. So MySQL_query, a predefined function which is used to execute the queries that has been augmented. So once you run the query, if the query is successful, then it will fetch all the queries what you pass. That's what you do in a particular query box. So instead of using this query box, you can use MySQL_query. And MySQL_query is mainly used to execute the queries. But this is going to work with 1 to 5, and if you are using PHP 7, you better use iQuery because it's an improved query. These things are depreciated in PHP 7. So in case of PHP 7, you have to use MySQL_query of connection handler. I think the connection handlers are these. You need to pass a connection handler and the query handler. Query handler is the one which will execute your query, and this is a select query. So it will take SQL query as a query to the connection, and this will run the query box which will execute your queries. So once you execute queries, the queries could be possible of two choices, like it could lead to a correct query or wrong query. This is where you will understand something like error handling in MySQL database. So guys, whatever the query you're running is MySQL_query, this gives you a possible choices of executing the queries, and the queries can be turning correct or wrong. For example, let's see what I mean to say. So let's get into the query box, and I'm going to write in PHP, but at this point of time I'm directly running on a GUI tool. So I'm going to go to GUI, and I'm in flip_db, and I'm going to select a table called products. So I'm in an SQL box, and I'm going to go and take this query, select start from products, copy, and let's try to see here. So select start from products. If the query is really correct, see there are only two of the outputs. One is if your query is correct, the execution will be correct, and if your query is wrong, they could be leading some errors. And now we are not executing the correct queries. What happens if you give a wrong queries? If you give a wrong queries, this is where we're working with MySQL error handling. If you execute a wrong queries, then it will generate errors. What kind of errors we have? This is where we have to understand. Now we have something called MySQL I underscore connect underscore error number. So return 0 if connection went wrong. So this is where I get 0 if connection went wrong. So, and this is going to give you error description. Describe the error description of what went wrong. So let's put down in this way. These are mainly used to handle the errors which are being created by the connections. So if I go to the connections to my database, I can possibly connect with MySQL underscore connect, I connect, or P connect, which creates a persistency connection. In this way you cannot close the connections if you use this. So anyhow, we have hostname, username, and password. If the host name is, let's say, localhost, and if the username is root, this is where I'm going to supply root, and password by default if say empty. If the connections are correct, I don't think I would be executing any errors. But for some reasons, if you have got a wrong values, like the localhost hostname is wrong, or for some reasons your password is wrong, and if this is a situation where you are unable to connect, so this errors will execute 0. The moment I get 0, I can understand something went wrong with the connection. But what went wrong? I cannot hardly understand about the 0 situation, but this is where it gives me 0. So let's try to go and understand MySQL underscore connect underscore error. This will try to give a clear description about why the connections are not being getting created. So this will give me the description about the error of what went wrong. This will give you only 0 if it's going wrong. Okay, so this is where I have a problem. If I can't connect properly, this will execute my situations. Okay, so I'm going to back to this, and let's make it save. Okay, so we have something about, sorry, just give me a second. We have something about this to understanding. Now these are used if connections are getting failed. They help us to understand the connections went wrong with the error number or description. Now there is something called about MySQL underscore error. Okay, so I'm sorry, this MySQL underscore error doesn't need any link connections, so it's what an improved version needs. So I've been here a bit wrong, so I'm going to remove it and paste it here. Okay, now MySQL underscore error. Now this is where you have errors with error number and error description. Okay, now these functions are mainly used to return error description and error number if query went wrong, not connections went wrong. If connections went wrong, I can use these functions. If query went wrong, I could use MySQL underscore error number, which describes the query error, and I can use error number, which describes the error number of the query went wrong. For example, the query that you are going to execute here is going to execute a query called select query, and if the query went right, they are not going to be at any point disturbing the code, and because the query is going right. For some reasons, if the query is wrong, let's say I hope this query is wrong. I've got a table called product but not products. So if you can see here, I've got a products and I'm going to execute a wrong query. Let's say I'm going to copy this and paste it here in your query box. In your GUI tool, if the query went wrong, I do see I have two situations. One is table flip underscore db product doesn't exist. So can I say this is a description about the error, and we have the description number. So if your product table name is wrong, I've got like something around 1146. Let me generate one more error. I'm going to go with something called select star from products. So let me just go with lowercase products. Let's see, we have in products, I have a ID or else name and price. So if the fields are correct, it will definitely execute the query in a proper way. So if the queries are correct, there is no errors going to be generated, and I've got like name and price which has the values. But if the fields are wrong, let's say I'm going to go for name. Instead of name, I'm just calling names. Okay, and instead of price, I just wrote SE. I think these are the wrong fields, and when you say go, I've got some query wrong, and this will lead me ultimately with again unknown column name in a field list. That's where I like to be understood about the description, but I don't understand the number way. Last time it was giving 1146. Now as of this table went wrong, it has got different number. So this is where we have in a GUI tool supporting number and description. That's what is going to be supported in PHP. If your query went wrong, it will give you the error number which is equal to this one. And if the query went wrong with your query handlers, it will give you a description that can be fetched out through MySQL underscore error, and that will be the description about this. So in PHP pages, how do you get the errors of queries is by using these two functions. And I hope this is for 7 versions which are same, going to give you error number and description. So this is where I can use error handling in MySQL database. Apart from this, we have get number of rows in a result. Okay, so what these functions will do is, these are mainly used actually to return number of rows got executed. For example, these commands is only valid for statements like select or show. For example, I have a query like, I'm going to write it here only, SQL is equal to select star from products. Okay, so if this is your query, and I'm going to go and check, if I go check on this particular database how many values we have in products is, I've got altogether somewhere around 6 products. Okay, so select start from product, this will fetch all the product fields which are available as values, and I do think we got to go with 6 values. Okay, so I'm not sure how many values are there. For example, the query is fetching 6. Okay, let's say I'm going to go with where let's say where price, or let's say where ID is equal to 4. So in spite of fetching all the values of 6 values, now it's going to fetch only the row which belongs to 4. Okay, so this row you can fetch anything out of this row which is 4, ID number 4. But guys, I am not sure. Let's say we have another issue. Let's put down in this way, select start from Flipkart, where mobile where category belongs to mobile, and brand belongs to sell one. If this is a case, and if Flipkart is not selling sell one, and there won't be any products getting fetched, so is there a products available or not, I can use this function. For an instant understanding, I'm going to say if MySQL underscore num underscore rows, okay, of $res is equal to 0. Let's say if it is equal to 0, I'm going to write echo sorry, but the products you are trying to search is not available yet, please check back later. For example, let's put down like this, select star from products, where name like let's say I'm going to go with name like this one, copy, and I'm going to push it here. So name like Samsung Galaxy S3, or else let's say I'm going to go with select star from products, where name is equal to let's make a different changes. I'm going to go with select star from FB users. So I think we are changing a table with FB users, where name is equal to Rajesh. I have to go with single quotation Raj, and city is equal to something like HY, Hyderabad. So in this case, I used to supposed to get many of the records. So if total number is equal to 0, for example, I'm selecting from city is equal to something else, or else where name is equal to Raj and country is equal to Japan. In this case, there is a possibility nobody might be in Japan, but if I write this in Hyderabad, I could get many of the people from Facebook through Raj from Hyderabad. But if I cannot find Raj from Japan, then this is where it will release 0 records. If total number of things are 0, I'm going to say sorry, the person you're trying to search as Raj in Japan has not been listed in this result. So this is where I will say if total records are 0. In some cases, if it is not 0, let's say I'm going to call select star from FB users where name is equal to Rajesh. If I execute this query, there could be many Rajesh coming out in this particular website. So if I go with this one, email is equal to Raj at gmail.com, so I could get only one person. So whatever it is, what I'm trying to search is MySQL underscore num underscore rows of $res is equal to 0. Suppose if you have given a wrong email that doesn't exist, okay, let's say this is not existing, so nobody found, so its total is 0. So I'm going to say sorry, currently the person you are trying to check is not listed. Okay, for reasons, if this is a thing of a query we are executing, like we have where email is equal to Raj, and if we have this guy, we can hardly find it only one person. Okay, is it one, or it could be many with this query where name is equal to Rajesh, because Rajesh could be many but email could be only one. So ultimately I have no idea whether person can be having one details or several details. So for this, what I'm doing is I'm going to go with if total number of records is equal to 0, do something else, fetch those details, else you need to fetch them. Okay, just write down fetch the details. So now the details could be one or several. If the details, let's say I'm going to ask select star from Facebook where name is equal to Rajesh, there could be many, so they are obviously greater than 0. Okay, or else select star from Facebook where email is equal to Raj at gmail.com, it could be only one. So I'm not interested in one or many. All I'm is if it is 0, we are going to say sorry, not found, else we are going to see if it is of only one record, this is good to print. But if it is several records, you need to use while loop, while and loop it so that severals of records can be printed here. Okay, please don't worry, I'm going to work on this in your PHP pages, just trying to introduce it. So MySQL underscore num underscore rows will take a resulted query handler. Now who is res? If you can see here, the query that is getting executed with SQL query handler is storing that in res. So the one which is running executing queries, we are going to check those queries, how many numbers got generated. For example, let's say I've got something around this query, selecting start from products, how many been executed. Let's see. I'm going to be in a database, this one, and we are going to push out this select start from products. When I say go, I do see, oh I'm sorry, you should be writing products. When I say go, in this case I've got total number of records is 6. So in GUI tool it is very clear that it is saying 6 total. So to identify that whether you have 6 or many, you have to go with this one, MySQL underscore num underscore rows of $res. In this case it will return 6 total. But what I was earlier writing is if total is 0, say that we are not having those details. If greater than 0, you should be printing them. For example, let's change the query. Earlier we have got 6 total, but now when I write select star from products, where ID is equal to, I'm going to go with 5. So if the query is correct, it will run this, but this time it won't be giving you 6. This time it's going to give you, what is wrong with this, right syntax, range inflip underscore db. I'm sorry, I haven't given, I have to go is equal to. Now go and see. This time we have, last time it was 6 records, but now it is giving 1 because the ID number 5 exists. Let's say I'm going to change the query to something like this one. This time I'm going to push it something like is equal to 10. So guys, if you can watch this or understand this, the query is correct, but only thing is the query is correct, but we don't have that data. For example, we don't have ID 10. So in this case you don't find any errors. All it will say is we have totally found 0 rows. That's what I'm saying. If you have 0 rows, print something like we don't find it, and if you have one or many, you have to print them. Okay, so this will allow me to understand how many records are there in my business. MySQL underscore I underscore num underscore rows is a 7th version where you can use the same method. Okay, now this is mainly used for returning your select query total. Select, if you work with select, this is mainly used to help you out to return the total query if total number of rows got affected through select. MySQL underscore affected underscore rows is also a predefined function which will return total number of affected rows during its last insert, update, replace or delete. So suppose I'm trying to insert a new record into the products or into the brands. Let's say I'm going to be in a brands, and I'm going to go with the brands, and I'm trying to insert a new record, and this record will be generated at 7th as a new record. So if I see here, I'm going to execute insert into brands. Okay, insert into brands, name values would be something around, let's say I'm going to go with Sony. I don't have any Sony, I believe. Yeah, I'm going to add Sony. So this Sony would be added on a 7th row. So this is going to give you how many got affected. Is it 1 total got inserted or 10? So both are used to return total number of records, but the only difference is num will work on a select queries, affected rows will work on a insert, update, replace. One more thing I have got wrong here is affected underscore rows will not take any arguments. So please do make no mistake that they won't take any arguments. Okay, so but ultimately both are used to get the total number of records. So we'll save it. Now next thing, if you can see very clearly, now that I know by this, using these two functions, I can clearly say whether we have one record or many records. So if I have one or many, I have to fetch them into my PHP pages. To fetch the details from my PHP pages, let's say I'm going to run a query called $SQL. $SQL is equal to select star from products. So I think we have products. Which one is products? This one is products, and I've got many fields as I'm fetching many fields as star. So this will fetch somewhere around 6 rows, 6 records. So I'm going to run this query. Query can be done with MySQL underscore query of $SQL. And if I run this query, this will return 6 records. Okay, now I want to write if MySQL underscore num underscore rows of $res is equal to 0. Suppose if it is equal to 0, I'm going to write here echo, sorry, but products are not available. This is what I'm writing. Else, you need to write else echo, let's say we have only one product. So I'm just trying to say we have only one product. how could it be when product, when you say where id is equal to something around 5? So I'm pretty sure it is 5, but this is not one record, it is going to have 6 records. So if you want to print 6, you need to use while loop, because we don't know whether it's a product is 1 or many. So using while loop, it will print if it is more than 1. So based on this, I can understand num underscore rows is going to give you. But if you have more records, how do you fetch? This is not the way you fetch and print. You have to use, in place of this, fetching queries. So MySQL underscore fetch underscore rows, fetch the result in the form of numbered array. For example, if I have this query executed, select star from products. So star means all fields, and what is the query is being running is MySQL underscore query of $res, and that's an argument I have passed. So this argument is running a query with SQL and returning 6 products. So this is your 6 products. Now if I want to fetch this through row, I've got all the 6 products in the numbered array. Numbered array means if you want to fetch IDs or names or price, you cannot call with this. The entire fetching is done on rec. So let's say echo $recof. I'm going to go with recof. If you want IDs, you have to write 0, as it will return in the numbered array. You have to write 0. Okay, and if you want to fetch its names, you have to write its number as this one. So that's why we call this as numbered array. But if you want to fetch the records in the form of SOs, this will maintain relation between key and values. So you can fetch this in the form of echo $recof. You cannot pass, if you want names, you cannot pass 1, because this is an associative array which will fetch the details from database, maintaining relation. So if you want all the products of names, you have to better call its associative array. So as it is. If you want its price, you can just write down price here. In this way, this will fetch the details of a price. So if you fetch the details in the form of array, okay, this will fetch in the form of both numbered as well as array. Suppose I say recof, I'm going to say 3. Who is recof 3? 0, 1, 2, 3. So this will provide all the description. If you don't want to go with this one, you can also write description, and this will fetch all the descriptions about this within the table, because it can fetch numbered as well as associative. So in this way, fetching can be done with this particular predefined functions. Apart from this, if you can see at the below, we have this function. These are similar, but they work with PHP 7, and this is where I've got an insert ID, MySQL underscore insert underscore ID, returns last inserted ID generated by insert query handler. Suppose I'm going to write a new query like here, insert into categories. Well, let's put down name values is something like watches. Now insert into categories. Where is categories? So this is where you have categories. Okay, in this categories we are trying to insert a watches, which I don't think we have. So when you insert into categories, it will generate ID number 7. So if you want to know what ID is being generated last, you can use this function, which will return always last inserted ID, and this will work only if your query is on an insert query. Okay, it won't work on a, just give me a second, it won't work on a, what do you say, it works only on insert queries. MySQL underscore insert underscore ID will give you insert ID number, means in this case it will give you 7th one. And why do you need to know this? Because if your IDs have been already assigned with size, for example, I've got like in structure, then this can generate only 2, means 99 records. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write one technique here, like if MySQL underscore insert underscore id. If it is greater than 70, okay, I'm going to say please change your id size, because it's been like only taking 99. Okay, so by understanding this as a 99 IDs can generate, I won't tell this daily. When it reaches 70 ID, for example, when you have 70 values and still we have 99 to go up, I'm going to tell on a 70 itself that change your ID or increase the size. So this will mostly insert your ID, last inserted ID. Apart from this, we have MySQL underscore pre underscore results of $res. Who is res? If I can see here, just give me a second, I just don't want to mess up all these things. Okay, and yeah, what we will do is, here we have insert id is done, free underscore result. This will mainly use to free the result that has been held by query handler. Who is a $res? Let's say this is one of the res. How many fields it is holding? Let's say I'm going to go with select star from brands. How many fields it is holding as a brands? Let's see, we have 6. So 6 is not a big deal, it's just 6 records. Okay, so we have 6 details. Now is this query very even much short, where id is equal to 5? So in spite of 6, this is now holding 5. So if you want to free the memory block that has been running with MySQL underscore query, which is holding only 6 records and being pushed into res, this variable is holding now, res is holding now actually 6 products. And if you want to clean it, you can use free result. MySQL free result only needs to be called if you are concentrated about how much memory is being used for query. So return large result set. For example, this is just 6 records, not a big deal. But if I use this one, I hope this is a very huge query which will hold millions of records, and this is generating millions of queries, and the entire millions of records are being held in a variable. So if you want to clean this variable, you can use MySQL underscore free underscore result, which will clean your memory result. Okay, and this should be only used on a large scale. And later we have is close the connections to database. If you use this will use close the connection of the connection handler that got generated. So who is CUNN? So if you can see here, when you try to connect or connect with iConnect, you can close them, because this is how you close it. MySQL underscore close or iClose, used mainly to close the connection that has been generated by MySQL underscore connect. So if you want to close the connection any given point of time, you can use this function. Now if you have this much of ideas on a queries or MySQL functions, we can start writing a project on this. So I'm going to start my first basic project as a CRUD, which you can see here, and this is where I have a CRUD. Let's go to htdocs5 and CRUD. The most abbreviation of this is create, read, update, delete. So if you can see this again, I'm going to push it out and say this is create, read, update, delete. Okay, so when you work with create, read, update, delete, the entire project will be adding your details, updating or deleting your details. So I'm going to create one of the project here. So for this we are going to use some connection. So my first page is to create, or let's say it's create DB. So I'm going to create database through my PHP pages and input all the values to PHP pages. Unlike your GUI tool, we are not going to touch anything in GUI. We'll do entire project through PHP pages. So my first page is create DB. So let's try to understand how do you create DB in your database. Okay, so that would be on my second video, and we'll get started to know how you start your application of CRUD project in a further classes. So I hope you can understand these are important functions. Without them you cannot start working with your business. So I want you to just go and have a further review and just have a very clear idea with individual function. I hope, and I'll see you on a next video of a continuation. Okay, see you, bye bye.